Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, OCPD, is a condition marked by pervasive pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, rigid control, and an excessive preoccupation with order and rules at the expense of flexibility, openness, and efficiency. Unlike obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, which involves intrusive thoughts and compulsions, OCPD is characterized by a deep-seated belief that one's rigid way of thinking is correct. Individuals with OCPD often struggle with chronic worry, overthinking, and an inability to adapt to change, leading to strained relationships and workplace difficulties. The following dramatization illustrates how OCPD manifests in everyday life, highlighting excessive worrying, overthinking, and difficulty letting go of control. It also explores how a psychiatric provider or therapist can help. Disclaimer: this conversation is a fictional dramatization. Always seek the advice of a medical professional. The alarm clock buzzed at exactly 5:30 a.m. James Carter opened his eyes immediately. He never snoozed, not even once. As he got out of bed, he smoothed the sheets meticulously, ensuring no wrinkles remained. Lisa, his wife, was still asleep. He frowned slightly. How can she sleep past 5:30? Doesn't she feel like the whole day is slipping away? Walking to the bathroom, he aligned his toiletries in perfect order before brushing his teeth. If anything was out of place, he felt uneasy. By 6:15 a.m., he was in the kitchen preparing his breakfast. 2 eggs, exactly 5 inches apart on the plate, and toast cut into 4 equal squares. Lisa walked in yawning. "Morning," she mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. James didn't look up. "I noticed you put the forks in the wrong section of the drawer again last night." Lisa sighed. "James, does it really matter?" "Of course it matters. Organization prevents chaos. If we ignore the small things, eventually everything falls apart." Lisa rubbed her temples. Or maybe people just live their lives without measuring every second and aligning every fork. James didn't respond. He was already mentally reviewing his schedule, double-checking if everything was in order. At 9 a.m. sharp, James sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. The quarterly financial report was due, and he had been working on it for weeks. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he reread the document for the 4th time. Something didn't feel right. The numbers were correct, but what if he had missed something? A small error could lead to disaster. He opened the spreadsheet again, rechecking calculations he already knew were correct. His colleague Mark walked by. "Hey James, lunch break." James shook his head. "I need to finish this." Mark chuckled. "Man, you've been staring at that report all morning. You know it's fine, right?" James stiffened. "Fine isn't good enough. But Reynolds said he needed it by noon. And I'll have it ready by noon," James snapped. He didn't have time for distractions. But as soon as Mark left, James' mind started racing again. What if there's a decimal point out of place? What if the formatting is inconsistent? What if Reynolds thinks I'm careless? The anxiety gnawed at him. He began rechecking the numbers for the 5th time. That evening, Lisa and their 10-year-old son, Ethan, were setting up a board game in the living room. James sat at the dining table, flipping through their monthly budget. He had already gone over it twice, but something felt off. He couldn't shake the worry that he had missed an expense. "Dad, come play with us," Ethan called excitedly. James barely looked up. "I need to finish this first." Lisa crossed her arms. "James, you already finished it yesterday. And this morning. And during lunch. I just need to make sure," he muttered, running his fingers through his hair. Lisa sighed. "All right, honey. We'll play without Dad." James clenched his jaw. "They don't understand. If I don't check this properly, we could end up in financial trouble. What if I miscalculated a bill? What if we overspend? What if?" Lisa's voice cut through his thoughts. "James, do you even hear yourself?" He looked up, startled. "What? You never stop. Your mind is always running, always planning, always worrying. It's exhausting for all of us." James frowned. "I'm just trying to be responsible." Lisa shook her head. No, James. You're trying to control everything because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. James opened his mouth to argue but hesitated. He wanted to explain that he wasn't afraid. He was just being careful. But deep down he knew Lisa was right. For the first time, that realization scared him. A week later, James sat across from Dr. Patel, a psychiatrist specializing in anxiety and personality disorders. His arms were crossed. I don't know why I'm here. I'm just efficient, have high standards. That's not a bad thing, right? Dr. Patel nodded. High standards can be good, but when they cause constant stress, impact relationships, and make life feel unmanageable, they become a burden. James shifted in his chair. I just want things done right. If I don't check everything, something could go wrong. Dr. Patel leaned forward. And what would happen if something wasn't perfect? James blinked. I don't know. Things would be messy, uncontrolled. Dr. Patel nodded. That's where your anxiety comes in. You overthink because you fear loss of control. But perfectionism isn't always about excellence. It's about fear. Fear of mistakes, fear of failure, fear that if you don't take care of everything, something bad will happen. James exhaled slowly. So what do I do? Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. James would work on identifying and challenging his perfectionist thoughts, learning that minor mistakes do not lead to disaster. Exposure and response prevention, ERP. He would practice allowing small imperfections, submitting a report without triple checking, to reduce his fear of errors. Relaxation techniques. Mindfulness and breathing exercises to help manage anxiety when things don't go as planned. Family therapy. Sessions with Lisa to help rebuild your relationship and find a balance between structure and flexibility. James looked at the doctor. And this will help. Dr. Patel smiled. It takes time, but yes. The goal isn't to make you stop caring. It's to help you care in a way that doesn't consume you. For the first time in a long time, James felt something other than worry. James Carter's story illustrates the struggles of someone with OCPD, perfectionism, overthinking, rigidity, and chronic worry. Through therapy, he begins to understand that his excessive control is not about responsibility but fear. With treatment, individuals with OCPD can learn to embrace flexibility, reduce overthinking, and lead a more balanced life.